Okay, hello everyone. So this is another Rigging Dojo live session. Can everyone hear me okay? You can just type yes in the chat. Okay, cool. So my name is Josh Carey. I'm a rigging supervisor at RealFX here in Texas. And tonight we have Jan Berger, who is currently in Berlin. So he's currently in Berlin doing teaching and research, and on the side he's working on this awesome system that I'm sure everyone has seen the video on Vimeo. So he's just going to give us a cool little tech demo of it, and at the end we'll do a little Q&A, and then if anyone wants to stick around and ask questions about Rigging Dojo, we can do that as well. So I'm going to just hand it off to Jan, and here we go.
Cool. Hi, I hope everyone can hear me well. I'm very excited to have been invited here to Rigging Dojo tonight and talk to you a little bit about MCS, which stands for Modular Character System, system that I've developed over the last 4 or 5 years on and off between projects. And yeah, the main motivation behind that was that there was always something with rigging that I thought and did the same issue over and over again. And at some point I thought, okay, maybe come up with something that would overcome these restrictions. So what I came up with was MCS, as I said. And I'm going to switch over now to my desktop and first show you a few slides, and then I thought it would be nice to give you guys a more practical impression how MCS works and how MCS works in different scenarios, because that was the main motivation behind it. Make it adapt to new settings, not just one certain aspect, but to address all kinds of rigging and animation aspects. So please stay with me while I switch to my... So I hope you can see it now and maybe even read it. About MCS, it reads, the main thing that makes MCS different from other rigging solutions I have found is the unique concept to describe natural locomotion in an abstract way. What that means is there is a certain, you may call it syntax, to describe dynamic hierarchies. So if you have a certain hierarchy at one time in frame, at a later time frame in time, you can describe a completely different hierarchy. So you can animate it. It's not static like when you have a bunch of nodes in Maya that you would plug together, and then later you want different functionalities, so you would need to switch connections. That happens within nodes. MCS features a multi-layer constraint system. That is something I will get a little bit more specific about in a minute. It allows flexible kinematic space and mode switching. Space switching, I guess everybody knows what that is. Sort of parent stuff in different ways. And mode switching means you can switch between inverse kinematics and forward kinematics, other modes. It has a very clear and compact user interface, so to learn some things about it to understand its functionality, but once you have understood these core concepts, you can have a lot of freedom. And it tries to make linear process. That was another thing that was kind of tedious about those classic auto riggers that certainly have fancy things in one way or another. But whenever you wanted to change something, like change where the shoulder joints are located or length of some arm, then usually you would need to go back to your template, have a script run to build your character rig, and then probably you have a bunch of deformers on top of it. And yeah, that was something that I tried to overcome now with MCS, since it allows you to specify those rig proportions within this abstract system, so there's no need to go back to some sort of template, right? Okay. Now, to give you an idea where MCS currently helps the user, it's mostly rigging and animation. To form a character, I would say slowly we're moving also into modeling, since when you have a character, you can rearrange its proportions to give you a nice base mesh that you could then export to ZBrush, sculpt and import back, and you already are pretty well on your way. But mostly it's rigging and animation. So this illustration shall show you a little bit what I mean with multi-layer constraint system. So there are different layers, and top here you see these colorful points or spheres, MCS handles, and these MCS handles are defined as a character. That means there are certain connections, and there's each MCS handle has a certain set of attributes, and these attributes define how this handle, right? And if it is in IK mode or FK mode. Another layer are these proxy geometries. Well, they're sort of just visual represented. They're just there for visual representation. And here is what I call, and I call the first layer with the handles primary transformation layer, because it's the first layer or the uppermost layer that defines what actually happens with the character. There should be no instance above it that tells it to do anything. And constraint to it is this secondary transformation layer. This consists mostly of joints that are constrained to the MCS handles, but also other forms of transforms, which basically the transformation of these nodes gets calculated by the primary transformation layer. So an animator wouldn't really animate this, but these transformations are useful then for deformation, right? And maybe I just go to you. I should just show you what I mean practically with it. So this is my primary transformation layer, right? Here are those handles. They have a certain structure that I can define and basically animate. So then let me turn up the geometry. Then you can see here those joints those joints are attached to the handles, right? That's my secondary transformation layer. For example, here you can see I have these IK splines, but between each handle there are multiple joints. And then I can use these joints as influence objects for my geometry and thus deform the skin. One purpose of this is to have a clear definition of who does what, and another advantage of, or another purpose of this is to have a clear line where I can cut functionality of my character, right? So if I have a deformation heavy character down here, I have this layer of constraints that I know attaches my deformation rig, so I can basically just switch it off right here and then get fast performance of my primary transformation layer with my proxy geometry, and can turn this on if needed. This means this. So that's my character in bind pose, right? Then he starts to run. At a certain point I have defined what the bind pose is. It's a little bit different than what you may yeah, it's not the same as the skin cluster bind pose, but similar. And then you can just go into the context menu, output mode, bind pose. Oh boy, maybe I haven't defined this. Okay, constraint, save bind poses, constraint, output mode, bind pose. Okay, those hands weren't active. Okay, I think you get the idea. That here my character, let's say those fingers are in the same position as well, and then your character stays here, but the rest of the character goes here, right? And so maybe I just turn it off, turn it on again, so it looks as it works. Alright. MCS that I found important was to have interactions between characters, and I guess everybody in production characters needed to somehow interact with another, and then there were reference, and then those parent constraints and work, and basically talk to has some sort of different solution, right? And I thought it would be nice to standard for this issue, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you run into this. And basically how this works is the same as you do with other MCS handles. You just say attach or detach, and then you can the animator basically can say if he wants to set keys, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute. And you don't have this hassle of managing some sort of constraint, and then when you update your references it breaks, and that's basically the part in the feature demo video that you maybe saw already. And so I'm gonna skip this and go to defining a rig, right? So that might be interesting. So here I have a character, and it's right now it's all FK. Yeah, pretty much FK. And I want to rig now this leg, and to give you an idea, yeah, how you would set up a leg compared to other solutions you may have encountered. One issue every rigger or every character rigger runs into is the foot setup and how to make it right. I guess everybody has heard about the reverse foot setup, and yeah, this works a little bit differently in MCS, and yeah, this let's just take a look how you would do that in MCS, because I found it took me quite a while when I first learned scripting and I had to read tons of tutorials to set up, and let's just check how this works in MCS. So you have all these FK handlers, right? They're all set to FK. Now, if you want to redefine your hierarchy, basically all you need to do is attach and detach. So for example, here your character is all FK, right? So if you want to isolate now the rotation here, you can say detach, rotate. So now rotate, and if you want to attach it again, you can say attach, rotate. Alright, and you can tell MCS to do it for all, or for translate, rotate and scale, or for only one of those. So, and the same works with IKs, right? So to define an IK, all you need to do is set the preferred angle. Oh, hold on, my Maya session just died. Is that so? Let's go into another session and open that scene again. Sorry about that. Yeah, so once you have all your MCS handles in place, all you need to do is define the configuration of those handles. And there's no need to fiddle around in the hypergraph or connection editor. That's all done by attaching, detaching, and switching between IK and FK. So here we go again. So handles, set preferred angle, and pole vector. Here MCS always wants to have a pole vector that has been defined already. You can tell by this dotted line, and now we can say okay. So now it's switched to IK. We can tell that it's in IK mode now, since there's a circle around it. And another thing MCS did was position the pole vector into the best position. So now we have an FK foot. So that's not really yet what we want. So now to invert this hierarchy here, I simply say detach all. So now this front handle here does not follow anything anymore. And now I simply select it in the order that I want the new chain to be and say attach all. right? So now I have defined an FK chain. So, but to be able to pivot around the heel here, we may need some additional handles. So we just go in here and create us a new one. Maybe call it heel. Make it smaller. And that's the nice thing about MCS, you can add those handles at any point in time, right? So when you realize later you want your foot to pivot around some other pivot around the heel, you can either move this guy here or add another handle at some other point, right? So first I need to make sure that this handle is connected to my character. And right now nobody's following him because I haven't told them to do so. Next one, say attach all. So now here I have my pivot. Here's my other pivot. And if I wanted to do some foot rolling motion now, this is something you may have seen already in the demo feature video, then you run into a problem here, right? And that's where it's challenging, I guess, for at least it was for me. Set up in the classical means and then group them and then build this interesting concept. What want to do is rotate about its parent, right? And that's why there's an attribute called orbit in MCS that allows you to do exactly such a thing. So any handle may orbit around its parent, right? And thus it allows you to create this type of motion, which is actually quite handy, as we may see later. And yes, so that's how we define now a leg, right? Nothing special, just to give you an idea how you could rig a leg with MCS, how the workflow is. No need to go to the hypergraph, run thousands of scripts, or go back to some template skeleton. It's all here in the viewport, usually. Okay, so this concludes this example, and yeah, I think I would like to move on to my next example. I released this last video. I received lots of emails and I was very, very happy about it, that so many people liked it. And one question that repeatedly came up was, can MCS handle mocap? So we started working in this direction, and I thought, okay, that's an interesting challenge. And here's a very early prototype how this could look like. So that's all basically all that I did here is import an FBX file. Here is it in and it's just a joint skeleton with rotations, mostly rotate, right? So first step could be that you want to create an MCS character from this, so you get a little bit more functionality. and there is this UI which allows you to attach to selected transform joints and then apply to hierarchy. Basically, we select the root joint, and then just hit create. Iterating through the hierarchy and creating encounters. Maybe I'll make them a little bit. Here we go. And by the way, here are those handles in the outliner. And always connect to character. So now this MCS connects them to a character, and an MCS character can consist of any number of handles, right? So there's no limit to it. And I hope now, where did our character go? Great. So now we have a motion capture file here converted to an MCS character, right? I mean, it's a very simplistic character. It's all just MCS handles, but I think we're already in a good position here. And we can check if it's really an MCS, editing some attributes here. Yeah, looking good. Okay, so that would be a nice starting point. Now, let me just, do we have time? Yes, go a little bit into the secondary transformation layer that I mentioned earlier, and something I call split bones, which helps you to quickly create transforms that will help you in. And let me just create one that will illustrate you much better what it is. So they're called split bones because basically they, oh, I forgot to do something. Yeah, and another thing I try to do is three on a character. Usually a character has a left and a right. So a very simple thing I like to do is define what's on the left and what's on the right side. And I'm totally agnostic what type of object that is. So I can take these two joints here and set them as mirrors. And here, here. And what that allows me to do now, when I create one of these split bones, is add connections. So it creates those. So they are not correctly set up yet. We need to define the front axis and the up axis. And basically all they do is joined into three parts. So this guy has its pivot here, this guy here, and this you in much distributing your deformation if you want to change or distribute twist, right? Deformation with just standard smooth skinning. Those split bones have various modes. On the show controller, I usually just use standard upper arm. There's another mode called shoulder. Probably it should be called upper arm. What it is right now. And as you can see, MCS is able to tell the right front and up vectors, but that's not a big deal. We can set this up in a second. Basically, we look here. Okay, that's minus y and plus x as up vector. And what's up here? Minus y plus x. And now the proxy geometry needs to be corrected as well. So this may look a little bit confusing, and I'll just skip the detail here. Those are just various modes that you set how the behavior to go into all the attributes. And now we'll do it for this guy. And there we have a mode called forearm. And again, we need to check the front and the up vector. Maybe this time it's gonna go minus y and plus x, minus y and plus x. So where is it here? I guess that's in. Yeah, with a little bit more careful scripting, this could probably all be done with a click of a button. But yeah, I think we're good already here. So what are these good for anyway? Right? So now you can see when you rotate your upper arm, it distributes the rotation. Right? So you have some nice transforms that you can use for your skin cluster to get nice rotation, nice deformation, sorry. And the same thing for the lower arm. So right, okay, and maybe we just continue with the, as you have seen before, for a character now. I hope I didn't mess up his rotation here. Looks a little bit, but anyway. Okay, so we're in a good way here with our character. And if we should change now the proportions here, you see, we'd have a chance to get some nice deformation there. Okay, and now problem is that our character is all FK, and now we would like to switch some frames to IK, yeah, to make the editing a little bit easier. So what I'll do is create another MCS handle. Maybe I use the rig tool this time to place it in space somewhere. So there it is. There's just some handle somewhere in space. To use that as a pole vector now, I said pole vector. Now you see this dotted line. And now I make sure it's actually connected to my character. So I say connect to character. And the position is kind of awkward. So I select those 4 handles. And then there is a simple command, position pole vector. So that looks already much nicer. Maybe our pole vector doesn't need to be that big. Right? So I would say we're in a good position now to do some space switching. Before we can do that on a couple of frames, we need to key the configuration of our character, right? So let's see how. Maybe we will do it until, yeah, maybe until here it's IK, and then here we go into FK. But sounds reasonable. Okay. So until here, we need to use the configuration. We do that with the MCS panel. So, and here under options, there are various attributes that you can say you want to key. And basically all we do is specify the time range, the selected attributes. And now it runs through the timeline, sets those keys. When we do a space switch now, it should be able to handle that. Maybe we should set keys. And now MCS runs with the timeline and does a space switch on every frame. And actually that would have worked. IK, and here it's back in FK, right? So this is a standard, not a reverse foot, a forward foot. And if we want to revert it, could just basically do the same as we did with this other character in a pose before, but just by selecting a time range, you can say now detach all. Attach all. So now we have a reverse foot setup, basically plotted to an IK foot. Nothing big, but just to give you guys an idea that motion capture editing is doable with MCS, and yeah, I'm working on it to streamline that and yeah, make it accessible to people who are interested in using it. Okay, so this concludes this example, and yeah, I think I'll move on to my next one. So I hope you guys can see this. This is a shot from the feature demo that you may have seen, and this is nothing special. It's just the chameleon open its mouth and some butterflies come out of it. And this was from an animation project that was really simple, and I was asked to do some animation within 6 days. So all these chameleon shots that you see there were done with modeling and rigging and rendering in 6 days using MCS. And so in the end I had this challenge of creating this stream of butterflies, and while working on it was wondering what would be the best thing to deal with it. And since I don't have massive and I'm not a real crowd expert, I wanted to come up with something easy and simple that I could control, and came up with this, which I want to share with you right now, which I thought might be interesting to see or to illustrate that you can do things with MCS a little bit, or that the name Modular Character System also means that it's modular to other Maya in a way that it behaves well. It follows design guidelines by Maya. So if you have other tools that work in a similar way, you can have them work together. So MCS does not try to be an isolated island, but rather be a good partner in production. So maybe I'll start with another Maya session to make the example a little bit more clear. Something I didn't go into detail yet, but that you may have seen in the feature demo was the rig tool. I always thought it would be nice to have the opportunity to rig interactively and not always work with scripts here and scripts there. But if you want to create a bunch of handles, you basically set them in the viewport, and you can get a mirror if you want. And another thing, MCS feature is spine. So the IK spline in MCS has little to do with these IK spline solutions that are read up to rig an IK spline, and I tried some of them, found that sooner or later we run into issues. So I tried what I came up with. So in the rig tool, basically all you do is and you define front vector, up vector, and then you define how many spline points you want between each handle. So what you maybe 3 is enough. Or you can guys oops, no more handles. So this is basically 3 MCS hand joints. Right? Let me make those joints a little bit smaller. Maybe hide my grid. Okay. Usually those IK splines use some sort of curve or surface and then use clusters to define certain parts of that curve or surface and then transform that through space. And one thing that I always did not like too much about these things were that the curvature was a problem, especially if you wanted to change radius. And so how this works in MCS is that you have a so-called bend attribute. So if you have an IK spline and you say bend, then you can get actually yeah, I don't know how to call it, a palm in the wind, or how you may want to call it. So you don't really have a curve here yet, because you need to edit the tension. You can as a secondary spline tension, primary bend, right? Now we hit the T key. Now we can bend here. And now we can edit the spline tension. So I hope you see what I mean. Basically, this is like an FK chain where you would add up different rotations. And the nice thing here is that you have your FK, but actually on top, if you want to have IK, then you can do that as well, right? And that's what I use for spines or trunks, or and what I did in this shot here with those butterflies is basically I created a bunch of IK splines and then this NURB surface to it. I hope you can somehow see it. So this is this long tube with these various MCS handles attached to it. So this tube is basically like a character. And then we can also use the bend attribute, and this allows us to define the curvature. So, and then I wanted to have these butterflies here. Now let's grab one of them. So that's one of the butterfly characters. Probably a little bit more sophisticated than they needed to be, with tons of handles, and I don't know, I used maybe 4 or 5 of them, but just for the fun of it. And maybe we grab one of these guys here. So we have each butterfly is a separate character, and this tube here is a character. And this basically what I did now was what I mentioned earlier. You have characters interacting with another. All these things are referenced, I believe. Yeah, they're referenced. And these constraints. So what happens is, here are other MCS handles, and all I did was use point on surface you may have used in rigging yourself already. Basically what they do is they take a NURBS surface, so that's why I created this NURBS cylinder, and then these they move along the surface, and as you can see, one butterfly is attached to each of these guys, right? And to get a decent rotation, what did I do? I used a normal constraint to get a somewhat decent rotation. All that then is that these butterflies, follow them, and again with the orbit attribute, they circle around these handles, right? So I have one handle moving down, orbiting around it. So that's how I get now my spiral. On top of that, oh, they've gone really fast. There they go. You can see them. They have this flickering motion, right? And maybe we'll just move a few channels. Maybe that illustrates this a little bit better. Following that handle, right? And if we want to change the path that they are flying, we can just grab one of these handles, and as you can see, it stays attached to it, right? So this is just an example how you can use MCS in a context that is not so obvious and come up with creative solutions for all kinds of rigging issues. And that's really one of the fun parts for me using MCS, is that again and again I encounter situations where I think, oh, how should I do that? And then I can come up with something within MCS, you know, without creating an extra tool and another extra tool, but by having these certain defined basic concepts that work well together. Yeah, and that pretty much is it from my side for now, and I hope I gave you guys a little bit better idea what MCS is about, and also a little bit, yeah, maybe I try now to switch back to camera, and then we'll do Q&A. Shall we do that?
Hey, Jan. Gonna add
Yes.
myself here real quick. So there's a couple questions down below. If you switch back to the browser.
So, try to switch the camera.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Shall I read the question? In particular, I'm wondering if the control objects are built on demand with the custom API function. Yes, that's a command that creates a handle, and I mean those handles are basically custom locators. So they are derived in the API from the locator class, MPX locator. And this creation command is basically like create node, and then you define a name and the type. It's little more than that. I just made a convenient command to to create lots of handles at once, because at first I had this with create node and then all kind of scripts, and I found as soon as you have a couple of dozens handles that you maybe want to create at a time, having an API command is just faster, right? there's not more functionality. Okay, I hope that answers this question. So you could use this command to in your scripts to build MCS characters, for example. Okay, what kind of map MCS has in the twist deforms? Do they flip in extreme poses, or is it 720 degrees free? Which twist deforms? IK splines or those twist split bones? These IK splines, if you talk about these IK splines, they can go well beyond 720 degrees. That's actually a good question. I forgot to mention that. Is twisting and popping, that's a big issue in rigging, and these IK splines have a certain memory, internal memory, to avoid flipping. So the only time you would encounter flipping is when you have extreme switches in rotation from one frame to another. Say you have a very fast motion and from one frame to another there's something above 180. This you could run into twisting, popping hell, but as long as you obey that, you can basically twist those a lot. Okay, I hope that's maybe regarding the split bones, they should behave well. There may be some bugs here and there that where there's a case that I didn't observe yet or test fully. You know, minus C is up and minus Y is down. And, that could be the case that you encounter some popping there. But if they are set up well, then they shouldn't pop. And yeah, it took me a while. And what kind of math is behind it? It's all vectors in space. Yeah, some a little bit quaternions here and there, but all in all, it's vectors and matrices. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, I guess. I hope that answers this question. If not, let me know, please. Split bones. It also creates joints for skinning, or do you use the created cubes as influence objects? These split bones are joints with the shape node, period. And the reason just being yeah, Maya's skinning behaves sometimes nicer is if you just give it joints. You know, it expects joints, give it joints. Makes things a little bit easier, and yeah, but it could also be transformed. Set it up now with joints, but there's no specific reason why you couldn't use the normal transforms and then use those transforms as influence objects for skinning. And do the MCS controllers use message nodes to pass hierarchy info rather than read it from parenting? Yeah, I use message connections a lot. For example, these mirror definitions that I talked earlier about to identify nodes. You know, these pole vectors. They use message connections as well. So when you hit the context menu on your knee and say IK, switch to IK, then MCS looks, is there a pole vector connected, and if not, it complains. But message connections don't play a role when it comes to defining the hierarchy within animation. Those are all static connections that pass data, right? Message connections don't pass any data, they're just pointing at some other object. And those connections that define the hierarchy, these attributes, those are static. Unless you create new handles, of course, then you get new connections. And rather than read from parenting, yeah. And then there are these certain set of attributes that define those hierarchies, and yeah, then the MCS sort of solver, as you may call it, takes those attributes and calculates the transform each handle, right? How will these tools become available? That's a question I ask myself a lot as well. Uh, I'm very excited to hear all this. I hope you guys believe me that I'm really working hard to get that thing out the door as quickly as I can. Right now there's some beta testing going on, and I hope to expand this beta testing in the um, in, in, in the near future. And when it will be available to the broad public hasn't been specifically decided yet, but yeah, it has to be within the foreseeable future. I mean, it has already grown a lot, and people are using it in production already. So it has reached a certain stable. Of course, there are always things in development, like this whole motion capture thing, and I hope to expand it also a lot. Right now, it's mostly about kinematics and giving your smooth skin cluster some nice transforms to work with. But I see it right now more as a foundation, you know, as defining like a standard for digital characters that you can build upon, you know, with more advanced deformers, maybe have a built-in pose deformer, you know, all these kind of things, but all as, you know, units that you can use or not. So if a studio likes something about MCS, like for example, if they think, okay, there's some other tools that serve our purpose better, we'll take that, but we're able to have these tools communicate or somehow coexist, cooperate, and yeah, just to get production a little bit more, yeah, better. I think the one question I may note on the side here is sometimes I get, yeah, so how do you see with technical directors with tools like this? Are TDs then superfluous? Are we out of a job? And I don't really think so, because I think that the quality bar always rises, and there are enough challenges in rigging. If you look at advanced deformation techniques and stuff like that, there's still a lot of room up there, and yeah, I just hope that with MCS, you know, you get your homework done quickly, and then you can go out and do the exciting stuff, right? That's how I see it. I'm not trying to take anyone's job. Okay, do you plan on implementing dynamics for jiggles, muscle simulation, and such on the MCS handles? Dynamics is a very interesting point. Yeah, like if you have some IK spline to get some sort of wiggle, that would certainly be cool. Regarding muscles, I don't know. Seems to me the Maya muscle tool seems to work quite well. I'm not trying to reinvent wheels. I have one user who recently did some muscle tests with MCS, just by putting Maya muscles on top of MCS. That seemed to work well, so it's already there. So I don't know. I didn't. I have no plans yet to work on muscles. Can you create groups of rigs settings to switch between like foot rig types or hand rigs? Yes, there are these poses, and these poses are basically sets. They store information, um, and the configuration, and then when you load these poses, you can say load them in relative mode, so that it will MCS pose with an icon It will look at the configuration and try to apply that to the character in the viewport, maintaining the overall transforms of your handles the way they are. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about giving these MCS poses a new name because they really serve now a lot of purposes, like structuring your rig. You know, if you have a bunch of handles that you want to modify at once, you can use poses to basically define sets and modify those guys. Yeah, so basically they're just more like sets, these poses, right? Yeah, and the idea of these, one of the ideas of these poses is that TD could define certain configurations like bind pose, arm FK, arm IK, and so forth, and store that within the asset file. And then if the animator decides, okay, in this shot I really want my IK fingers and I have to switch forth and back, so I want to define one of these poses. So an animator can define custom poses in the shot or in the scene file as well, right? So he doesn't have to go back and ask the TD, and a couple of days later he may or may not get something that he likes. And yeah, that's something I think is really useful, right? And how much of the system can be called via Mel or Python? The actual calculation between frames is done within nodes, right? So there are very little standard Maya nodes involved. They're all custom nodes, like IK is all within custom nodes. And yeah, so that's within the nodes. And you can manipulate the structure with Mel or Python. When I started, I wrote tons of scripts and all kinds of different purposes, but it has all boiled down to a few commands. I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. Like there's a create command to create nodes, there's a connect command to connect handles to a character, and it's really just a handful with a bunch of flags. And yeah, then you can use them within Mel or Python. That's really up to you. What I like to tell people is that with MCS there's not much need to script, because one of the ideas is if you have a character, you actually don't need to rebuild the new one. You should be able to take the character you have and change the proportions, the configurations. So the need to write scripts should actually be very little. I hope so. I hope that's not too bold of a statement, but it's not like that you go back to your template and then you have all these script things running. But would be interesting to know what people needed scripting for in production. I could guess maybe for pipeline issues where you would need to bake out transforms or stuff like that. But for building characters, I don't know, but yeah, maybe I'll learn soon. Could a pose library be integrated to pass poses, track animation tracks back and forth to an MCS rig? Yes, could be, of course, could be, and but not done yet. It's on my to-do list, of course. I like to export stuff and import stuff, and but I haven't come yet to a post library. But it's getting higher and higher in the priority list. Yeah, if an animator says, okay, I like this pose, this configuration, export it, share it with your buddy, import it, and use it. And yeah, there's this whole bunch of things that want to be exported, right? And yeah, it's definitely on my to-do list. And on a side note, one of the interesting aspects of MCS, or I think interesting aspects, if you think about it, is since there is this concept to describe hierarchies in a very free way that is abstract, that means independent from Maya, right? So I could write it on paper, and without tons of connections I could say, okay, this is my character. And if I now export an animation, basically I also export the configuration, right? You may have encountered scene file descriptions like FBX or BVH. For example, in BVH you have these trees, right? You have skeleton FK trees. They're all forward kinematics. Okay, that's an obvious choice. You know, you have this character skeleton, but what if you're able to describe the dynamic configuration or the kinematic configuration of your character within that animation file already? Basically, what you then don't need is this certain rig to load your animation file, right? Right now, it's often like a key and lock concept. You need to have the rig is your key and the lock is your animation file, and you need both to work together, right? With MCS, you should be able to rebuild your character from an animation file, right? So that you get your structure from that. Of course, there's some issues involved, like matching nodes, etc. But I think that's a pretty interesting feature or unique possibilities that derive there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see how people, if they embrace this idea, or if I think that is interesting. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, can MCS also be used for facial rigging, or are you working on something else for these matters? Um, for facial rigging, I use it only very little right now. Mostly for eyes and for the jaw, and some jaw motion, and then combine MCS with a simple post space deformer to get some nice deformation as the jaw deforms. But within MCS, I have to admit that facial rigging wasn't really a big thing for me so far. First of all, I didn't see it as quite a unique challenge as this whole kinematic thing. I mean, there are very good concepts out there, like Jason Olivia and other people have contributed, and there are also tools, commercial and free ones, that do a decent job. So sooner or later, I want to be able to provide users what they like to see for facial rigging, or what helps them to create better facial rigs. But right now, these MCS handles, you can use them to do basically anything you want, but there's no special facial functionality of MCS handles yet. We'll see. Maybe that will change in the future. I don't know. We'll see. How are the split joints following the splines in between handles? Motion path curve constraints. These are direct to those MCS handles. Actually, this IK spline within the MCS handles, and the reason
maybe
is
I should
that...
clarify. Hey,
Huh?
Jan.
Yes?
Okay, so my question was, it looks like in between the handles, it looks like it's a actual spline curve. So is that actually a spline curve between the handles? And how are you actually attaching joints along that spline?
No. This is no IK
Oh. Whoops, it looks like we lost Jan. there he is.
Hello?
Okay, looks like we lost you.
Am I back?
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Ah, cool. So, regarding IK splines. So, these IK splines are not IK splines in the traditional sense, where you have the curve info and the NURBS curve. It's all within the MCS handle. And these lines that you see in the viewport, it's just an OpenGL line that I draw as a visual reference, right? So it's basically an MCS handle. Basically just gets one input, one other handle. I think, I don't know, word matrix or something like that. And then it calculates the spline, and then it needs to know how many of these joints it shall calculate, and then you will get those joints, and then you just need to connect those joints to the output of the handles, and then you have your IK spline. Does that answer your question?
Cool. Yep.
Cool. Can you build a rig via scripting code? Okay, so you can create via commands. Yes. Yes. I mean, if I, like I did here, create handles and connect them, under the hood, it's always some script executing some MCS command in the end, right? Usually it's gathering some information. Okay, which character are we talking about? Which handle? Do we have a pole vector? And if it's all set, then we'll call certain commands. But definitely, yeah, you can build a rig with scripting, with commands. Yeah. What do you advise to person who wants to write an auto-rig system? I suppose it's a scripted auto-rig system, and first I would really look into the mathematics, understanding matrices. That matrices basically are just a bunch of vectors, and that these 4x4 matrices were created at some point by someone who wanted to make them look very efficient. So you have rotation intertwined with scale, and well, yeah, while this is certainly very nice that you have all this information in this very compact structure, this structure also has some issues. For example, a matrix doesn't know if it's 360 degrees or 720 degrees. It doesn't know anything about it, right? So that's where a lot of popping and so forth occurs. And when you build an auto-rig system, I guess a good auto-rig system makes as few assumptions as possible, right? About how are your arms oriented? How long are your legs? How are your legs oriented? Does it have to be a biped? Can it be a quadruped and whatever? So you have all these transforms in space somewhere pointing at something, and in my experience it all boils down to these vectors pointing at some other vector. And yeah, the sooner one understands these things, I think the better, or the sooner you can write robust tools that won't pop and twist, and be able to mirror transformations, right? And yeah, the rest is just learning scripting. I mean, I've talked to a few TDs over the last couple of years. Something I notice is some people focus far too much on the scripting side of things, and not on, you know, what kind of character do you actually build, right? So some people say, oh, look at my auto-rig system, it's written in Python. And to be honest, I don't care if it's in Python, it shall build a nice rig, right? And then I don't care what language it uses, right? And yeah, so I would definitely focus on those 3D transforms, understanding these, and yeah, and not trusting obvious solutions. Yeah, that's what I learned. Yeah, I hope that answers this a little bit. And then go and read books. How does MCS manage handle keyframe space switch inverse hierarchy data inside Maya? How does MCS manage the handle key inside Maya? Like I mentioned earlier, these MCS handles, they have certain attributes, and these attributes get passed along. And the keyframes for these switches are on the handles, right? So if a user animates a switch, he sees it. If he selects the handle, he sees it in the timeline. And if he wants to edit then the timing of the animation, just needs to select the handle and then in the timeline. And yeah, what's happening under the hood is there's this constraint solver that then takes all this information from all these handles and then calculates the transformation. And if maybe the user specified something invalid, you know, one handle constrained to another, and that doesn't work out, and then MCS will draw a red cross, knows that he or she specified something invalid. I hope that answers the question a little bit. Does MCS support bidirectional constraints? I guess that depends on the definition, what you think that, or what you define as bidirectional constraints. If you think that it's that you can inverse the FK relationship between handles, then yes. I guess maybe you've seen that in the feature video. I didn't really animate a lot here. Yes, you can do that actually in animation, right? So you can have your forward foot and frame later switch, invert the hierarchy, so that you're that's what some people would call bidirectional constraints. But yeah, for me, bidirectional is a little bit confusing since it says in two directions, as if there are only two, and with MCS it can be between any, right? I hope that answers the question a little bit. Do you have some books you would recommend? Do I have some books? I guess the one that helped me most was Complete Maya Programming by David Gold, the second volume, because it in the beginning it tells you a lot about the background in mathematics, you know, about rotations and transformations, and that's something I think he did an amazing job describing that, and yeah, that helped me understanding all these things that actually happen, and it's not all that scary. If you are no math genius, you can learn it anyway. I'm no math genius either, but thanks to David, I understood a little bit what's going on. But some more advanced stuff like quaternions and yeah, I don't know. That's far beyond my capabilities. Often I realize it's helpful just to understand what these things are, what are they for. You don't have to, be able to prove some mathematical concept, but just, what are matrices and what can I use them for? What are these vectors in there? If you know the sine and cosine and how the actual rotation is defined in there and how you can calculate your Euler angles from that, that's not important because usually in the API or scripting you have convenience functions that convert that, right? So if you're using the M transformation matrix class in the API, for example, you give it a matrix and then you can say, give me the Euler rotation from that. So you don't need to do any calculation stuff there. Or if you have two matrices that you need to work with, it's just matrix multiplied by matrix. And so you don't need to know the specific mass behind it often. And yeah, so I hope that makes it less scary, or at least it helped me. Does MCS allow us to load, save, transfer animation between similar characters? Uh, uh, well, like I said, the whole library aspect of MCS is not implemented yet, but I have yeah some code in that from um, sort of another rigging project where I take now this whole library concept that I developed there. It's also a personal project of mine to into MCS to manage all these things. But sooner or later there will be a decent animation transfer tool. Yeah, cool. Any more questions?
Hey Jan, I think your video is locked up. I don't know if you can toggle to your screen or.
So I hope you guys had a good time, and I hope you learned a little bit about MCS. And yeah, thank you for your attention, and yeah, goodbye, and hope to see you soon. And if you have any questions later on, just go to my website, suntoucher-labs.com, and there you'll find an email link, and then you can just shoot me a mail if you want. Okay? See ya.
Great. Yeah, that was great. Thank you very much. Uh, if anyone has any other questions for Rigging Dojo or for Jan, feel free to ask them now or shoot us an email. And thank you very much, Jan, for doing that and staying up late.